let's take a look at the Intel insiders who are buying and selling and see what's really going on, because I did see some hype around this, but I think people are misunderstanding, and there's definitely some good news and, well, maybe not bad news, I don't know. Now, Peter Lynch famously once said insiders might sell their shares for any number of reasons, but they buy them for only one reason, because they think the price will rise. Now, I'm going to take a little issue with this, and you'll see why in a second. Now, if we look at some of the people who are selling, you can obviously see there's a lot of green people buying, some yellow people who are selling after some option exercises, and red, just people selling. And this is roughly, the past year. Now, you see this Gregory Bryant, who sold, about a year ago, 200 grand, and then again 164 grand, and then again 75 grand, and then just recently, the past few days, 140 grand. So does that show that this person lacks confidence? He needs the money. I don't know. He's selling at about $500,000. Is that what's going on? Similarly, you see this Stephen Rogers. He sold 147 grand, and then before another 171 grand. So what's going on here? So if we look at this Gregory Bryant, he's the executive vice president, general manager of Client Computing Group. That was the one that made the new chip, Alder Lake, which everyone I think is really excited. Yes, they had a slump in sales for notebooks, but is this guy selling because he doesn't have confidence? That would be a really bad sign, right? However, if we look at the Form 4, so this is something you submit when you're on the board and you're doing all these purchasing and selling. So he started off with 99,000 shares. Now that's after he acquired 2,200. And then he ended up with 98,000 roughly shares. So that's not a big difference when you really think about it, right? Because 99,000 before that, you have to subtract 2,000 and you're ending up with 98,000. Seems like you're actually getting more than you're selling. And so if you just look at these codes, you can see the M is pretty much when you convert an option. He was awarded some options, I guess, just as a reward as an employee. So that's a conversion happening. The F means, yes, he's selling, but that's for tax purposes. It's really that S over there at the bottom where he's really selling those shares. And so if you look at kind of, I guess, his track record for, about the past year, you can see that the ownership at the bottom was 91,000, and as time goes up, the ownership keeps going up. And so even though the delta, how much is he selling every time, always looks like it's a negative amount, but yeah, that's just compared to, I guess, how much he's getting, but it's still going up. So just something to keep aware that even though it looks like this person keeps selling, yes, they're selling when they exercise their options. Yes, that's happening, but they're not selling as much as they're getting. So really not a bad sign from my perspective. And you can see the exact same thing with this Stephen Rogers, I believe his name is. And, similar thing. He's ending off 103, but, which is 2,000 less than the 105. But he acquired in the very beginning about 2,000, so it's kind of like a wash. Now, he's the executive vice president general counsel, and so if this guy was selling, I might be concerned about all the lawsuits that Intel's facing, right? So it's also important to keep in mind who's doing the buying, who's doing the selling, in my opinion. Then we have a lot of people purchasing, a lot of insiders, and so there's a lot of excitement, people really hyping this, and I think they're right and I think they're wrong. So let's just go through it really quickly. So this Dion Weisler, assuming I'm pronouncing that, look at that, he bought 500,000, that's a lot, and increased it by 61%. And then before that, he bought another 250,000, right? And another 250,000, right? This is within a few days. So up to now, he's bought pretty much $1 million, and then another 250,000 a few months before that. Now, look at that. It says that he is a new owner. And so this started making me think, well, maybe there's a reason that he's buying it, not because he likes the stock, but because he needs to buy the stock because he's part of the board, and members of the board usually have to buy a certain amount of stock. So I had to do some digging. But pretty much I found in the executive officer stock ownership guidelines, somewhere on the website, I can't remember exactly where, but within 5 years of their appointment or promotion, and the rules reset in 2019 exactly how much you have to own, and they don't get an extension for that. There's certain amounts that each person has to own in terms of the stock if you're going to be on the board or you're going to have any major title, I guess. And so the CEO, for example, has to have 10 times his base salary. So if that base salary goes up, he has to buy more shares. And similarly, if someone is on the board, right, they're a non-employee director, so then they have to have 5 times the annual cash retainer within the 5 years of joining the board. And so what is that cash retainer? So I saw some mention of this Dr. Goldsmith and the annual cash retainer is 90,000. I didn't really trust it because it's some news article and I don't know where they get their numbers from exactly. So I had to do a little bit of more digging, and yes, I did actually was able to find it on their website. Well, buried in a document. It's actually in the Form 14A. I don't know if it is on their website, but the cash retainer is 90,000. So that means that you roughly have to have $450,000 if you want to remain on the board, and it has to be within 5 years. And so if we're looking at Weisler Dion and his purchases, you can see that pretty much he has, what would we say, about 1.25 million. So the $450,000 would satisfy the requirement when he joined, and yet he kept on buying. So that would be, the first $500,000 you could pretty much ignore. He needed to do that. The extra $750,000, well, now you have an interesting argument. Is he doing that because he's buying the stock because he really believes in it? Very likely, and I would probably lean that way. You could make the argument that maybe he just wants to show himself as a team player. He's buying stock. He wants to, maybe he has a lot of money. He just wants to show that he's really involved in the company. That's possible. I personally would lean to the fact that I think he believes in the company, but he doesn't believe in it 1.25 million, right? That's important. Yeah, but he does believe in it in 750,000, right? So if you, for whatever reason, thought the 1.25 million was really important, you have to understand you have to discount some of that number. But nevertheless, I still think it's a very strong positive. And the fact that he's buying it so quickly, I don't know exactly what that means. Does that mean the price right now he thinks is amazing, or he just happens to be in a buying mode? I'm not entirely sure. But he obviously believes in it more than just the bare minimum that he has to do. Now, when we come to another person who invested quite a lot of money, $1 million, and that's a 10% increase, James Goetz, assuming I'm pronouncing that right. So that means he probably has roughly $10 million in this company, or at least he had 9 million, whatever exactly the number is, and now he invested a whole nother million. So that to me, he's beyond the bare minimum. That to me is a large number. It shows a lot of trust or interest in purchasing the stock, right? So to me, that's a really positive when I look at these numbers. And when we look at James Goetz, look at his bio, he's a partner of Sequoia Capital venture capital firm. And so you can read the rest of it. So not only is he in tech, but he understands businesses, he understands the stock market. So to me, that's a really positive sign. So that's the type of buying, the insider buying, that I would look at and think, oh, that's important. Now, the truth is, I don't know his net worth. You could look that up if you'd like to. And so maybe this is just kind of, a drop in the bucket for him. I have no idea. But to me, that's the type of investment that I would look to and think that wow, that's impressive. And that impresses me a little bit more than Dion Weisler, for example. Not just because of the amount, but because of the background, I think, anyway. And so when we look at Patrick Gelsinger, the new CEO, right, you can see he put in $500,000, which is 5%. You can do the math. It doesn't really matter to me because he has to have 10 times his base salary. I don't really remember what that is, but and it's true, he has 5 years, but he's gonna have to invest a lot of money to meet that requirement. And once again, he might want to show that he really believes in the company and might even go beyond that. And, it might not necessarily mean because he really thinks the stock's going to go up, but that he understands that that's something he has to do. But nevertheless, I wouldn't be surprised if he hasn't even reached his baseline of what he needs to do anyway. So I kind of discount that purchase. And there's certainly quite a few like that. Now, there's this Omar Ishraq over here who invested $1 million, right? That's another big amount. But that's 132% increase, right? And we know that he has to have $450 million $450,000 in the stock. So, this $1 million increase, I don't know. To me, it's just mostly him trying to reach, his requirement. And of course, when I looked at his bio, yes, he's been there since 2017. But however, it's important that he was elected to chairman of the board in 2020. And so once again, maybe there's some additional requirement. I didn't really look into it. I didn't see anything for him to own extra stock. Does he have a bigger cash retainer? Is there some other issue? I'm not entirely sure. Or once again, maybe he just feels like being chairman of the board, he shouldn't have the bare minimum of the stock, and he should at least show a little bit more support. So very possible that that's what's going on. I wouldn't really value that investment so much, as it means he's put in a few extra $100,000, probably beyond what he needs to. Now, I just took a look at some of the people who had been there for a while. I can't pronounce most of their names, but Sue Liu, I don't know, but she's been there since 2016. Gregory Smith, 2017. Frank Yuri, 2009. And Riza Moray, or Laviso Moray, since 2018. So if we just quickly go through, what have they been doing? Because they've been there for a while. And so they're not having to buy to reach some mandatory minimum of the stock. They're not, they understand what Intel's been doing for a long time. And yes, there were new requirements, so they also probably have to increase their ownership. But nevertheless, let's just take a quick look. So if we look at Liu King, she put in 48 grand, not a lot. So even if she had the bare minimum or not, to me, that's not a big enough amount of money unless she's making very small amount of money. That's not a big amount of money for me to say, oh, wow, she really believes in the company. And I'm sure she makes a lot more than 48 grand a year. And now in terms of Gregory Smith, right, he put in $500,000, but once again, that's like 219% increase. So that could just be for him to pretty much reach vaguely what he needs to have that bare minimum. So if you do the math, he has now 700 grand versus 450 grand. To me, that's not showing that much, faith in the company, let's say. He might just have to do that to have his ownership. Now, of course, if the stock goes down in value, he still has to have 450 grand. That means he's going to have to buy more. So you might say, oh, well, why not just wait until it goes down? Well, he might not be paying attention to every single day when the stock goes. He might just have a buffer in there that, I'll put 700 grand and I'll always be above that 450. So, you could easily discount this purchase as well. Now, similarly, when we look at Frank Yuri, we'll have to take a little bit more of a look at this. 500 grand. However, this is a 20% increase, right? So that means he's got 2.5 million. You can do the math if you'd like, of the stock. That's well beyond the bare minimum. So that's a positive sign, I think. However, when we look at Laviso Moray, she put in $250,000, and that's a 71 increase. So if you just do the math, right, she has now 600 grand versus 450 grand. To me, that doesn't show that much confidence. However, we did mention that Frank Yuri invested beyond what he really needed to. And once again, he is a managing member at Darwin Capital Advisors LLC. So once again, someone who understands the stock market, understands economics. So to me, that's a really positive sign. And so when I'm looking at everything that's going on here, right, and I'm seeing all the people who are buying, all the people who are selling, I think that the people who are selling, not a big deal. They're getting more, they're owning more, right? I'm not bothered by that. In terms of all the people who are buying, there's not that many that really stand out to me as showing a really good signal that there's all this positive stuff happening at Intel, right? I could discount quite a few of these and discount quite a bit of the number. However, James Goetz putting a whole nother $1 million, that's really increasing his ownership. And then you also had Frank Yuri also putting in $500,000, really increasing his ownership. Some of the other people, I'm just not sure about. Omar Ishrak, maybe that would also be a signal, to be fair. And Dion Weisler, I think, is also a signal, because as much as he put in the $500,000 baseline, but he did put in, an extra 750 grand. So this might be really showing that they really believe in the company. They think it's going to go up, and that's kind of what they're expecting. So there's definitely a few people, two people for certain that I would say it's a good signal, and they're two people who understand the stock market. So that's a really big positive. And then you have some others that I think would show a positive signal, but there's 4 or 5 of these people who maybe you could discount their purchases. But nevertheless, so as much as there's a lot of overhype about all these people buying, no, a lot of them are buying to reach some requirement. However, you can see a lot of people buying, or at least a few people buying, who I think really do believe in the company and are really showing some promise, from my humble opinion. Now, this is not investment advice in any way. This is just entertainment, so take with it whatever you'd like. But please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you think and what you think is going on and where you think the price is going to go. I think that this is a really strong positive. And as much as I thought there was a chance, I didn't say it would, but there was a chance that the stock value of Intel might fall and give you a chance to get in at an even lower number. Nevertheless, there might not be that chance. Right? There's so many people buying. There's so much hype. There's so much excitement. And I think that's a really positive thing for Intel. So good luck to anyone who's already invested. And for anyone trying to get in, I don't know, I guess good luck. And we'll see what happens with the stock. Thanks so much for watching.